Hi everybody, today I will be bringing to you the subject called Egregorology. It is the study of thought forms in its multiple ways that it presents itself, and I'll be doing an in-depth review and studies on this, sharing it with you. This is a very important subject because it also connects with the ability to create your own reality. So it's rather important to understand how it is formed, how you are able to understand it, what it essentially requires or means, or how it is used, and so on. So it starts with the premise where the quote is, "Signs and symbols rule the world, not words or laws," from Confucius. And what I would rather want to say is you should actually scratch that whole thing out and say, thought forms rule the world. And that's basically it. Because this is essentially what the premises of its understanding of its existence within this reality. Your thoughts essentially write your own script. It creates your own life path. How you go forward with it is how you use your thoughts. So the introduction for this material is that, and I've got a lot of stuff here, so I will be reading from my own notes as well. I've got a lot of sources where I found the material, as well as my own notes that I will be sharing with you in this matter. So it really has to be explored in its depth so that you understand the entirety of the whole thing. I started by saying thought forms rule the world, and your thoughts write your script, or writes a script. Today's subject is nothing new to you, as you know. It does have a lot of power over the way your thoughts are formed and how your thoughts are connecting with certain thought forms, or in this way, how people connect with people. And then there's the other effect in between. And I plan on discussing these things in its depth, so I will be touching on a lot of subjects that will present thought forms in its various forms. Essentially, you're looking at something that is called the thought form, and then once there is some sort of ritual that takes place or an emotional connection that builds with that thought form, then it becomes an egregore. That's basically the premise of it, but it's a lot more in-depth than that. I did do an energy read on it, so what I wanted to also present to you is my own personal review on it, looking at it in an objective perspective, and then of course everything else that comes with it with regards to the researching. Why this is important is so that you understand that the entire reality within its structure and those in between it and in it are operating within the bandwidth, I could say, of thought forms. I also said a while ago, many years ago, I said to you, there's a very, very small percentage of actual beings that are not in physical form, that are supernatural. And that is something that you need to understand, because supernatural beings that do not require thought forms that exist, that is up for debate as well. So that is something that you need to keep in mind as well. It's very important that you take note on why the subject is so important. It's something that always presents itself, but I don't think there's enough actual study done on it. And I am not trying to say that I've investigated it more than anybody else. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that I'm going to present this whole thing to you from a metaphysical perspective, which is what is required, as I've said before, in how to look at things without it actually consuming you. That's very important. And that is what you need to keep in mind. You're also needing to be reminded that there are those who are using these things to try and get away with what they do. They play mind games. Those are the type of people that are affected by it, perhaps even. These folks are also using thought forms or egregores to ascertain the ability to learn how to materialize or manifest, because that's the word, manifest. It sounds like infestation, their own reality. So it locks into the idea where there's been a lot of material written on how to build your life, how to do this with your life, how to become a superhero overnight, how to stand on a hill and be a king of the country, of the world, and blah blah blah. It's all these sort of things that have been coming through a lot more, and may be a subject perhaps for another day, but it does incorporate the idea of thought forms, because we have to go into the understanding of why thought forms are so relevant by revisiting the origins of how it was constructed in the first place. That sentence, it touches on the natural laws, the hermetic natural laws, where there is a reference that all is mind. And that is something that you need to take away with you as well, so that you understand that essentially whatever you think and how you present yourself through your thoughts, it radiates into your immediate environment. Like I've said so many times, that this is how you have to make sure how you allow these energies to radiate into your environment, what you want really to happen for you in your life. So it is something that you would need to take into its depth of understanding, really, and then ultimately come to that point where you are aware that how it impacts you is really based on how you think. Really, this is the literal deepest part of the subject. There are those that use these forms, these thought forms, as ways to alter or infect your experience, be it targeted towards you, and many of you may experience that, may have had experience of that. Very few may have become aware of it. It is also something to take note that it is tangible, so it does have a presence to it. You can also look at it as alternatively a psychic attack, but that's something, again, that needs to be taken for what it presents to you, based on certain symptoms, based on certain experiences that you may have had, etc. It's also something that has a form of, it is substantial in its existence, yet it is not as dense as a human form. So what I'm saying is there are certain people that create certain thought forms. Call it whatever you want to call it. I will call them thought forms as a collective. And people use these things to activate certain things in society, to demand certain things from the collective society, which are physical and tangible and human based. And then there are people that go into societies or go into certain groups or orders or religions or whatever you want to call it, that encounter those things as well. And now there's a whole host of these things and what they are all about, because normally this is how it works. When humans become involved in trying to become creative like a god, normally then it sprouts so many heads that they have to give new names to it every time, but it's essentially a thought form. So and these are the type of humans that are keying into it. There's a psychological deficit in there somewhere. It's also leading towards why ideas are forming around transhumanism as well. So it really is about a particular way in how society behaves in itself. It really is also about how the society in itself is using these type of things, specifically with the right amount of dosing to trigger certain ideas and for it to expand or bring forward thought forms. It's possible how it presents itself, what its titles are, what its names are, its impact, and how you are ultimately able to also protect yourself from it. Because it's very simple. It's the one thing that I've been talking about for many years on here, and that is literally the only way to do it because I've tested it out. Okay, so like I've said to you before, I am my own guinea pig. I will do these tests and I will go into these things. I will go into the cave there. I will prod the bear's head and see what happens. Okay, this is what I do. And then I will come back and tell you, okay, this is how it works. That's what we need to be mindful of, and this is how we can protect ourselves from it if you're interested, as usual, as always. This is your choice, your free will to have the choice to be able to understand and look into the subject. I want to say, please do not have any fear when you listen to the information here. If you feel afraid, then do not listen to the material, because then you still need to understand who you are. And you're still learning to understand that. And that is okay, because there's videos on this channel from many directions and angles in which, and places in which one's life can be in. And you literally can pick a video, and that video will give you the information that you need, if you so wish to do so. Okay. And for those of you who are new here, my name is Aurora, and this is the Promethean Channel, and welcome for being here as well. So today we will be looking at how all of these things are presenting themselves in the wary natures of how it seems to present, and how you may have to, how you encounter it, perhaps sometimes being unaware of it. And whereas other people are also aware of it, and this has existed for many eons, because this is part of the constructed form of the energy fields that are within the reality, and the dynamics in how to interact with reality. It's like the ocean. Okay, you can't take the ocean away, but it exists there for a reason. You can, however, swim through it, work in it, you can float on it. So this is what I'm trying to explain to you. There are energy fields that are very important to understand in relation to how these things exist. So the script keepers, or egregores, which are really the ones that you could look at as also the watchers of the scripts of the reality in which it exists. They weave with the counterpart narratives to sustain themselves. Yes, these things can sustain itself. It feeds. It has followers. It requires energy from its followers to sustain its existence. And there is one thing that keeps coming up that seems to touch on a lot of why these things are sometimes formed with a particular purpose, and that is called nihilism. And nihilism is, for the most part, the essence with which the energy in itself functions. As it requires a certain type of subjectivity or a belief to be subjected to something. So the followers of that group or that order are required to be subjected to the group energy, the energy of the group. In other words, you come into the group and you have to adhere to the group's laws, you have to become subjected to the group's orders, how it is structured, how people are in the group. So there's a group consensus. Okay. And that is not new to many of you. You understand that the word consensus is a vital form that assists the way that the group functions within itself. And you can expand the group even further, and you can go into a bigger area or footprint, and you can look at nations. You can look at the way that the land is formed and that which is on that land. In that way, there is a subjected acceptance of a structure, an invisible order, in a sense, if it's in nature. However, in nature, I don't see nihilism. I see the existence of live, die, feed, expand, grow, evolve, whatever. So it's very much set in that structure that it exists in that particular order. Nature presents itself in that way. Humanity in themselves requires certain other things to reform their groups so that they can build their subjective order. There has to be a leader, and everybody else is subject to the leader, and the leader is subjected to the group energy, to the energy of the group. And that group creates a thought form. And this is why I'm saying to you, it's very important to understand that when you come to, when you go to channels, if you are made to feel like you do not have an individual experience, if you feel that you are stripped from your individuality, then that is the problem. That group or that channel or that meeting or that order or that society or whatever it is, if you are stripped from your individuality, that is the first thing that is required to sustain the group's thought form. Okay, and this is why I'm saying when you're on this channel, you are individual. You exist within your individual reality. You are aware of who you are. I'm not going to tell you what to wear. You're going to tell yourself what to wear. You're going to tell yourself how to grow up, how to eat, how to feed yourself, how to do exercise, how to do whatever you want to do. You are ultimately in control of your own mind, body, soul, and spirit. Okay, it's something very important that we need to keep in mind of as well. Nihilism is not a philosophy, okay? Nihilism is just an ideology that is created for a particular purpose to sustain a particular behavior, okay? Because I see that they write everywhere that nihilism is a philosophy. It is not a philosophy, okay? A philosophy has got the awareness of philos, which is the soul, okay? And nihilism makes no space. There's no place for a soul's individuality, okay? Doesn't mean that people that are nihilistic don't have souls. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there is no godly or soulful wisdom in a group that is a bunch of control freaks. Let me just put it out straight for you that way. There is nothing of God in there, okay? There's nothing of soulful, godly wisdom, because that's philos, that comes from a high place in that group. That aspect seems to be taken away. That is how the nihilism in a group functions. You may have experienced it or encountered at certain places in your life, perhaps at work, perhaps at school, wherever you are in your life, and you felt that sometimes there's always this weird sort of edge to certain people when they're in a pack or in a group or in a gang, so that sort of energy is something that you feel it's something that repels you or tries to lure you. Either way, you either join us or you go away, join us or die, type of thing. That is essentially the foundation for how nihilism is supplied. You're essentially looking at that. Nihilism, therefore, argues life is without objective meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value. My way or the highway. Okay, that's how they work in that way. You don't have you don't mean anything. You have to be in this group, or you're nothing, or you're dead, type of thing. So that's basically what I've explained to you just now. It involves a rejection of fundamental beliefs about morality, knowledge, and social structure, originating in 19th century Russia. Obviously, it would come from there because there is also socialism and communism that have been birthed there too, because of a repressed, suppressed existence and a lot of counter movements that kept trying to remove the original way in infrastructure of how Russia used to exist. Remember, it never used to be the way that it is presented now. As Russia presents itself as communistic, and it comes from those that have been trying to take over, that took over the original families. A catastrophic overthrow of certain governmental and leadership positions had caused these things to spring out. Yeah, you get that everywhere actually in the world. The word nihilism comes from the 19th century, and its birthplace is Russia, and also took the Russian Orthodox religion to actually function, to be a form of security for people. And most likely that's where people started to become aware of something like that, which focuses on the meaninglessness of life, which is related very much to the Gnosticism, that they believe that life is evil and I must make my life quicker, shorter. But I don't see mass, suicide in that way, because they like to live the martyrdom aspect. Yeah, they do not believe in themselves. That's basically what it is. You don't have an individual existence. If you believe you're individualistic from this, then you are somebody that's a rebel, or you are someone that is going to cause the collapse of the group. So therefore you are on the edge of being kicked out or being fired, or you threaten the school group, or you have to go, you're going to be without friends, or you're going to lose something. Okay, so that's essentially the whole thing. There's this premise, because there's energy that it requires. There's a reason why I'm bringing this whole nihilism thing up for you, because it needs that energy, that tug of war inside of the group to pull people to them, whether they either repel them or they pull the right ones to them. It's essentially a way in how the thought form of that group functions to draw people in a particular way, and to also keep them under control. And so it always uses that, whether they are good groups or evil groups. It's the same mental, psychological process that happens. There's no difference in that. Because this is going to be a very in-depth discussion on thought forms, egregores, servitors, etc., because that is what I said, they are all the same thing, essentially in different degrees of experience. Once you know the key essence as to understanding what its core principle is, then most things should make sense to you in this realm, in your life, and perhaps hopefully for the rest of your life. There's a lot of speculation on thought forms. Like I said, there's so much material out there on it, and for the most part they're all repeating what others have said. They've not done the actual deeper homework, except for the guy who actually wrote the book about it, Mark Stavish, who actually gave his own expression of it. There were some other groups that actually made deeper discoveries on it, like the Theosophical Society, which I found somewhere. I see that they still exist. They're very small, and amongst others, of course. But for the most part, all the material that's been out there on the subject of egregores or thought forms are all rehashed, repeat nonsense that are lazy people. Actually, I'm just going to call it out like that. Lazy people that don't do the research, the homework. They just repeat the same mistake that the other guys have repeated in their work because they didn't understand what the author of the book wrote. It's also very important to understand that you cannot speculate on the understanding of a thought form either, because in a very interesting way, when you start to speculate on what you think these things are, you lose the track of what it is that you're actually looking to understand, to investigate on. So what I'm saying is speculation is another thing that the mind tends to do, or that the person tends to do if they don't understand something. And speculation is what actually contributes to the creation of these thought forms, whether they're minuscule or massive or whatever. It adds fuel to the flame in a stupid way. Let me put it that way, because that's essentially what it is. I mean, so let me give you an example of why speculation is actually a problem. Speculation is another part of your thoughts that are forming when you're thinking about something, instead of actually looking to see what it really could be about. And so your thought forms the ideas and the understanding of a speculative nature, which is like a half-life of something that doesn't really have full substance to it. It's like you're creating spook awesome candy floss in your head. So speculation is something that should not be done unless you actually know the subject in itself and you're in a position where you can actually present something on it. So this is why I'm saying to you, you need to make it a rule for yourself that if you see these things that are being discussed and it's not understood in the way that it should be understood, or it's not researched in the way that it should be researched, if there are no referrals to it, if there are no links presented, then it's speculation for the most part, or people that have been lazy to put down links. So, and places where they found the material, because that is how you know the difference between speculative things that don't really give you anything, that's just empty, and things that actually have substance. Okay, candy floss versus a plate of food. Take your pick, decide where you want to be in that one. Okay, so the keynote that we need to take away from here, it's time to reach beyond the mirror in your mind, that which is illusion, that which your mind tends to create for you to understand based on speculation, and to actually get through it and use it as a doorway so that we are able to focus on this whole subject in its nature for itself. So in other words, we are now in a park where there are a lot of wild animals, but we are looking at it in a very respectful approach so that we can understand what it means, how we are able to understand how to approach it. Some people will perhaps become a little upset about it because I'll touch on a lot of stuff about these animals. These are not real animals. I'm just using it as an analogy. Okay. And we were looking at how your thought field is being used, or can be used even by yourself personally and impersonally, by others or by yourself or by groups or by events, and how it has an impact on your mental energy. in your life, perhaps of your life and over your life, if you are not aware of it, of how you understand it to be. So this is called thought transference. That is one major point that you need to understand, that thoughts that connect with other thoughts, people that connect with one another, there is a thought transference that takes place. So once you understand thought transference, that is when a thought is transferred, or thought transference occurs, or a thought is used as projection or even mirrored. Okay, which can probably give you a lot of understanding of what the subject is in itself, what the entire premise is of itself. So metaphysically, I have looked at it in a particular way as well, and everything else that will be coming into that as well. So the thought within its own solitary construct forms an energy current that lines up with energy externally or out there, with which things of matter are manufactured or crafted. Some craft out of ignorance because they live with the eyes outward there for that purpose, and some are aware of how their thoughts are creating certain things or manifest things. So we have the various degrees of where people are in which they understand manifestation in itself. So if you learn to understand the fundamentals of creation, then you will know that when you focus on something to attain it, then the focus is essentially energized with emotions. All right, desire, perhaps out of anger, happiness, love, etc. There's a lot of emotions involved in how thoughts are, how thoughts manufacture something in the material realm. Okay, and so some craft out of ignorance, as I've said, with either way different sort of emotions in it. There are some people that actually desire to cause harm to another person, or desire to have that person in their life, and that is also called thought transference or thought projection. Okay, so to tell you, to explain this to you, it is very important that you stay within an objective perspective place in your thoughts, so that while you're understanding the subject, that you get to understand the meaning of its fundamentals and how to also understand how creation works. So this is why the subject is quite an intense subject. It's very important to understand that your thoughts, when you have them, that when you think on something that you wish to experience, that it is done with the awareness that you are wanting to experience a life, let's say, better than the one that you're functioning in with. But let me explain to you something that seems to be missing in most material about how to manifest your life, is that what you experience within your thought, every moment in which you think on something, you create a new moment in reality which supplants the previous one. I'm gonna say, let's say you wish to have a job. Okay, your thoughts are, I'm thinking about applying for X, Y, and Z job. I would like to actually have a job because I am ... tired of my other job, tired of being poor, ... whatever, fill in the blanks. Okay, and you focus on that job and you start visualizing how good it's going to feel. You're going to feel it inside of your body, that wanting to apply for that particular job itself, and how your life may be perceived to change. Okay, and you feel that change. You actually feel almost happy. You feel almost euphoric. You feel energized in that experience. And in that way, you then go and you apply for the job, and what do you know? They called you in for an interview and you're A for away. Okay. You've already created a part of your reality manifesting itself, where you are in that position of being considered by another entity, or that's the company that you've applied for, to consider you, because you've considered yourself to require a better way of living. That's the very, very bare bones simple part of how realities are created. And in that way, you've created a new reality in that way. And so now you've got the job, you're working there, you think, I'm not paid enough, because there's always something, right? Or I'm extremely happy here. It's the best thing I've ever done. I can do this now and be at peace. Either way, there's always going to be something that will tell you what. But in whatever way you approach the situation, you have then created another reality in which you've accepted that you're going to be okay. You're going to be happy, and now finally you can pay the bills, you can pay the landlord, you're going to be okay. Or you just hate the person that works next to you because that person's breath stinks, whatever. Or their feet stink, whatever. It's whatever. And in that way, that person's feet are going to stink for the rest of your time that you work there. So you've just created another reality there as well, in that way. So either way, in your thoughts, you have created, even very simplistically, a few realities that you are experiencing within your life. Okay. So essentially, thoughts are very key in how it is formed within how you feel with regards to yourself. So if you're feeling like an angry SOB, then you're going to create things that are going to counter your life in an angry way, because that's just the basic nature of it. So your thoughts have formed those ideas to impact onto you, your own thought field, which is your reality. Okay, you have an inner, internal, individual field around you, which we will discuss, which is part of your own inner way of experiencing your inner thoughts. And then you have field around you, which is outside of you, which could be the office space that I'm in right now, which experiences what I am busy talking about and what I feel, and it is the environment that is X, Y, and Z from separated from the rest of the house, whatever. And in this, I can fill in things into it and make the room feel unbearable, that I need to escape the room, or I can fill it with thoughts that are creative, constructive, happy, fulfilled, exciting, etc., etc. Okay, either way, the room then becomes energized with those feelings. And when you go into the house, you find, there's the room I am the most creative in. Or, I hate that room. I wish I could just create the office somewhere else. Or I must just go do this or do that. Meanwhile, it's your own shit that you are experiencing in a thought formation around you. Thought forms and thoughts in themselves should be always made from a point of centeredness. In other words, objective awareness of who you are, what you think, where you are, why you think the way you do. If you're angry, do something about it. If you're not angry, then do something about it. Either way, there is an indifference in what it is that you're thinking. So in other words, it's still going to happen whether you think A, B, C, or X, Y, and Z. It doesn't matter. Okay? It still forms from your own field of energy, a field of energy around you for you to experience within. Okay, so that is the basic, very bare bones fundamental of how creation happens. Then, and in many ways, people are allowing themselves, some people, depending on where they are within their existence, allow themselves to be given thoughts by external material. It can be let's say it starts from being in school, where you're being trained and forced to essentially listen to the teacher. So you are in a subjected position where you have to submit to the teacher, or you're going to get punished if you don't do what they want you to do. You're going to fail and you're not going to work. You're never going to work again. I mean, that was the one thing that they used for my generation, was if you don't do well in school, you're never going to get a job, type of thing. It made no difference really, because the politics had changed anyway, so it was difficult to get a job either way. So it was a failed thought experiment. That I think that is what they do, is they set up these things so that these are failed thought field experiments, so that it forces the individual to become a particular aspect of society, because that's the nature of what they wish for the society to become. They wish for the society to become docile. That's the outcome, but they want social chaos. They want social anarchy. They want nihilistic individuals. They want psychotic people that are hooked on medicine. They want all of these things to happen by creating a thought field that's failed in itself, so that individual has to pick up the pieces. Perhaps some don't ever pick up pieces, but perhaps some people just fall into the cracks. Some people are unable to help themselves, and therefore they then become these parts in this social environment that are either this way or that way. It doesn't matter what the case is. The fact is, that person essentially then becomes subjected to a fact of a failed thought field that had taken place in the first place, set up that way so that it's not going to happen. What about the thought field for some people that have actually succeeded? Well, they're going to be in the same kind of construct when they go where they work. They may not be hired for this particular job, but something else. They are slowly eroded so that they have to submit themselves to perhaps less and less of quality life. Either way, they're going to be focusing and working on how to build that rocket 24/7 without sleep, without a family, without anything else. So there's always this weird sort of like thing that happens when you leave the educational thought form, the educational egregor system, to put it like that. And in this way, there's this nature within itself where it tries to reform itself. Some people actually get out of that stuff. Some people work on themselves. Some people actually decide to go off grid. Some people decide to go and live a particular way somewhere else, or they just become the subjects of the society that requires those people to function the way that they do. And this is irrespective of country and race, so, or even sex. Okay, so everyone is affected in some way, shape, or form. The observation that we need to take in mind here with regards to the metaphysical nature in which the structure is finding itself to exist within. Let's put it in a sandpit, because that would be the best way to look at it, so that we understand where this is going. But this material will sustain you for some time while I'm working on putting the other bulk of the material together at a later stage, which is the course. Okay, so I need for you to understand what Egregorology is about, because this is a very important subject to understand in its absolute intricate details. You know how to think in your thoughts and how to not screw your own life up by what you think and how you think and feel. Based on my observation, I can say from my notes here, thoughts are electricity tying into scalar fields. Scalar fields, which are physical fields that have magnitude but no direction. In other words, fields of energy like the sea. I think you could actually use the ocean, the way that the ocean is forming, to see it in that way. Okay, without obviously the density of it, just that's the energy in itself. And thoughts are basically like the wind that actually makes the fields go like this. And then the fields interact, or scalar waves interact with the thoughts, which are basically electricity that goes into it. And so then an electromagnetic wave is then formed, which is also based on what perhaps Tesla waves are. I made a question mark there. I thought it'd be best just to leave it there open. So scalar waves are known as longitudinal waves or Tesla waves, are a type of electromagnetic wave characterized by their oscillation directing being parallel to the wave's propagation, unlike the transverse waves like light. Okay, so this is what I got from online to explain what I was seeing when I looked at it. Essentially, remember I said to you I saw the sea with its waves moving like this, and thoughts are like electricity going into it like wind, and it's making the waves splash up or create waves or currents for the waves to move through. And these waves, like water, which mythologically I suppose could actually even be the water, the stage of the mid-heavens, I think. Anyway, and in this way, these waves are essentially formed in particular thought forms, how one experiences it, with the electromagnetic impulse which comes from the heart, the desire that actually impacts these waves to move the particular way in which it does, which is sine wave most of the time, unless it's done through whatever other means. Okay, manipulation and mind control creates no movement on those waves, and it becomes flat. It became flat like glass or ice. It just stays that way. There's no thought coming from the person themselves that are actually energizing those waves, and this is how it works. Okay, that's what I took note on. It's more fluid in its movement than light that actually creates waves in itself. So light is more sort of like one direction, from one point to the other point, from one point to this point, or from this point to this point. That's light. Thought forms come from here and create a much more sort of like bulkier impact on the wave of the energy around you. And that's basically what I saw when I did the investigation. Okay, and so very interesting. There's some other parts of it that's also very much important to take note, is the fact that Tesla obviously saw these things himself when he was experimenting with how to create energy out from the energy fields, which is the scalar waves. That is the word for it. Like I said, there's like 110 words and terms for all of these things, when really it just is what it is. It just is a thought form in action. And these waves, to me, appeared to be like etheric waves of the sea, movement like the ocean. Okay, so there's a note here on how scalar waves are described, which I wanted to explain to you how I actually saw the process in itself, where it explains scalar waves is the travels faster than the speed of light, superluminal, and that would be your thoughts, because thoughts travel faster than the speed of light. And scalar waves are not electromagnetic, but composed of pure 0-point energy, which means, like I said to you, it's ether. Okay, there's etheric energy around you all the time. All right, and this point, which is the 0 point, is when you start to think, when it accesses that connection of, I think I need to apply for a job that will actually pay me a good salary. That's the 0 point of thinking. And then the point of actually making that thought become a reality is by feeling, I can see myself driving a new car. I can see myself having my 3.5 family members, and I can get a salary and we can buy a house and blah blah blah. That, and the emotions start to come up. Okay, so that then culminates, connects with one another, and then that essentially becomes like electromagnetic energy to fuel the thought of, I think I need to get a job. It fuels that through which scalar waves interact with you, back and forth conversation here, thoughts conversing with one another, like those white horses on the sea, on the waves, the little white puffy foamy bits that come out as that's the interaction. If you're familiar with the work and the deep stuff about the Taurus model, the Beyond Thunderdome, you'll understand that the following thing that I'm going to explain to you, an observation of this whole thing, is that this is the thought forms within this wave of scalar or whatever, the wave of energy, and it is impacted by the curvature of the field in which the entire realm is existing in. And when it curves in such a way, you'll see that the following thing that was discovered in the 17th century, which is called Klein bottle, which is named after a person whose name is Felix Klein, where the image in itself explains how the thought starts. There's a space here you'll see in the image now, and how it is formed by the curve in which the Taurus model moves in its field around, and then loops back to you. In other words, in that motion, in that moment, there is an activity taking place where your thoughts are essentially filling up with potentials like meeting the wife or the husband, having 3.0 kids, and having the house with the picket fences, and having the red shiny car, and under the old oak tree, blah 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 story. Feelings are starting to fill up in that space as the wave of energy comes straight back to what it is that you have thought of within yourself, as it connects with the curve of the water or the etheric forces within the way the Taurus is formed. Thought in itself, once expressed, is displaying itself in a metaphysical, scientific manner that I've just explained to you right now. Okay, so on the second observation, because I've done another one, I did it again. I do 3 times observation so that there is no space for speculation. Okay, so on the second observation, a thought form, irrespective of its dynamic, is essentially one-sided, like the opening of the Klein bottle, which you see now. It traveled upon thought forming, thought traveling, could be following back to the point of origin while flipping the traveler, thinker, while flipping the image up. So in other words, let me explain this again to you. When you look at something, your eyes, the light that comes out of your eyes, flip the image so that your mind can see the picture that was upside down. So you look at something, you think this is straight up, but it's actually upside down, because your mind is actually flipped it the right way up. In the same way, the Klein bottle, when the thought goes, there's the curve of the Taurus field, it curves, and as the thought goes through it, it touches there, creates the next image, and then within that, the thought twists back, comes back to you. So the image is then impressioned into that for you to understand that there's the picture of the White House with the yellow picket fence, with the wife, with the kids, with the car, with the red shiny car, and the oak tree flipping itself up there. There it is. Within an hour, within 2 days or 3 days, you get a call for an interview and throw away. Okay, so that is how the science of metaphysically observing how a thought form is created through the energy field within this model space, the reality within its toroidal field. It's important to bring up Felix Klein here because in this way he has already discovered, without even realizing it, perhaps, maybe he did, that the energetic field within or around the reality or surrounding the reality in which it exists is based on a torus or toroidal model space. So this here is just another affirmation or observation for you to understand and how thought fields operate within the field of this nature in which it exists. Breaking into the field now itself, where we are now observing how the animals or the beasts operate within this system. How is it possible to fight something that is invisible, intangible? And you fight it with the lasso of truth. Yes, I know it's cheese, but that's basically the only way that you're able to understand what it is that you're experiencing at all times. Just for the interest of some, this is a picture of Pecos Bill famously lassoed a tornado, because that's what a thought field looks like. A thought form in itself looks like a tornado. Energetically, some of them look like that. And rode it like a bronco and directed it to bring rain to a drought-stricken region. He then wrung out the water from the tornado, saving the land. Okay, just a little ad lib there for you to understand that this is basically the process in how you actually wrestle a thought form. Because seriously, it was hard work to wrestle thought forms. All right. So Egregorology, point 2, the study of thought forms, egregores, servitors, and the thought form itself. All right. Socrates said, "The mind is everything, and what you think, you become." End quote. This means the mind is everything, what you think, you become goes hand in hand with all is mental and refers to the idea that our thoughts and perceptions shape our reality. Several quotes explore this idea, emphasizing the power of the mind in shaping experience, emotions, and even the universe. Okay, and one such quote is, "The universe and all it contains is a mental creation of the all." All right. There is a lot of focus on the mind and not enough on the heart, because I think maybe they're afraid of whatever they said, how it was going to present itself. There's another suggesting that the mind in itself is, according to them, is God-like. So the mind is like God. Okay, these are all quotes from people that have observed how thought works. These are not all my quotes. Okay, so one of the universal realm laws is the all is mind, the universe is mental from the natural laws or the Hermetic laws. This means that the mind of consciousness is underlying substance of the entire universe, as it is said, as it is put. They speak about the universe. Okay, I'm not living in one verse. They live in one verse. This consciousness is the mind of the absolute universal mind. Okay, so the reference about the word universe is just based from the quote which I found, which I'm using for the work. All right, so as you know that there are 7 natural laws, and these are hermetically principled, and so it's important to take note that it's mentioned there, and many of you will know that I've spoken about it before as well. So thought forms operate within the boundaries of the 7 natural laws because of the focus on the 7 archons that are controlling the construct for the reality or their universe to function within. All right. And that is basically how the structure of the reality is summarized. However, this discussion is not about the 7 Hermetic laws, which I will not be touching on because you are familiar with it and you can research it yourself to understand what it all means. It is important that we also take note on what is also added to manipulating the 7 natural laws, which is something that seems to have been brushed away. It's like not very obvious. You don't really find it anywhere, and that's something that's called, it's a sigil called the heptagram. Okay, and that's based on the 7 laws that have been incorporated into thought forms or thought fields that ascertain the control either over it or from it. So you're looking at the image here as the 7-pointed star, and this is the heptagram. It depends who believes in what it can do. All right. And it is important to take note that this is how certain magicians use things in nature or of the reality and incorporate it into their sigils and give it a meaning, a spin on it, like most people do, so that it can fulfill certain tasks for them on a natural level, on a material level. It's important that you realize that the toroidal model is based on balance and not on the star symbol that's being put there. So the symbol thing, that the sigil, is something for the reality that Aleister Crowley functioned in or lived in, and his millions of followers that have come after him, because he created this whole thing from the Kabbalistic symbolic connection with Judaism. The heptagram and its meaning became a traditional symbol to ward off evil, which the Catholics use. And the symbol is also used in, like I said, the Kabbalah, Judaism, to assist in whatever function it does. Okay, so the heptagram is was used for the work done by Crowley called Babylon, so to create his occult system called Thelema. The heptagram is known amongst pagans or neo-pagans as the elven star or the fairy star, 7-pointed star. So as you can see, things like that are then renamed and given another thing, and there's this whole speculation on what it can do. And I like the picture so much, I'm actually going to put it on my wall, and maybe the fairies will come and visit me and bless me with some lots of money, bags of gold, type of thing. So that's basically where that comes from. Or yeah, so as you can see, the heptagram has had many uses which key into the 7 Hermetic laws, and in this way there's a lot of focus on trying to ascertain it and use it for its particular purpose. It's even used in certain religious organizations, and even Gurdjieff used it as a form of creation or a symbol of array of creation, which I can say I think he's observed the way that the thought form actually forms within those 7 corners in which it was pinned down, which you cannot actually do, because it's like trying to pin the sea into a star shape so that it would work. So it's a lot of force that was used in order for that particular purpose to exist. We give no foresight to these things. I'm not talking about the veneration of the symbol or the sigil itself, but I am explaining to you that it connects in with the understanding of what the thought field holds within confined structure if it was created for it. But essentially that in itself is then a thought form as well. So really we know that the ocean or the sea really tends to flush ships out. It flushes these things out. It can never be constructed or forced into a particular anything. You cannot tame the sea. That's just basically it. And when I use the sea, in case you've forgotten the previous work, it's how the energy functions within the thought field itself. So there is simply zero focus on it. There's zero forgiveness to be given to any of these things that I've done. Don't get upset. Don't get angry within your thoughts. There is no forgiveness and nothing given to those who foster or believe that they could foster control over the consciousness of the human form as it exists, which means it's basically just a symbol that was created because they thought that they could pin down the entire structure of the natural laws of their universe, their single verse in which they existed within. And most of human race has become aware of these sort of things and have kind of sort of brushed it off, except for these new upstarter magicians who think that they can restart the whole thing up again. There's always one new peanut in a packet that thinks that they can actually do these things. But anyway, moving along from that. So we will understand now from how certain things can be manipulated in a certain way through symbols that could actually perceive itself to be a thought form that is constructed out of a sigil such as the heptagram symbol. And so all is mind, however, will return here, does not mean that everything belongs to the mental plane. You must keep that in mind. Remember what is used. The mental plane is the plane of mind associated with what we consider to be mental activities, such as thinking, imagination, and your overall mental state. And all energy and matter, both visible and invisible, and at all degrees of existence, is created by and is subject to a knowing, as it is something that is present, ever present, be it good or not of anything else that comes from good natures. That thing exists, that was created there for the purpose for something in the matter, in the material realm to exist within. So it was created for that purpose, for it to have a role to play in the construct of a reality. A thought form is a living mental and energetic form that transpires from your thoughts through the energy field, as I've explained to you about the ocean, in which you exist within. And that means it is alive and sentient, because it has a part of your intelligence in it. When you think on something, a part of you goes into the field for it to then come back to you. Remember the bottle, the Klein bottle that returns back to where it was sent from. And that is how a thought forms. Okay. So if you are an empathic person, for example, you will feel as if it has a presence or an independent force about it or around it. You can feel a particular presence from a group of people. Like I explained to you, you can feel the either repressed, suppressed, oppressive, defensive, offensive energy from certain groups. Kindness, goodness, loving, whatever. Either way, it doesn't matter. You can feel that there's a presence within that group that perhaps permeates the entire group itself, that you feel either you can connect with or not. So certain people in certain groups can either repel you or compel you, or draw you in or reject you. Either ways, that is why that is important to understand. So it functions within the duality, which I will bring up as well. And this is why I'm saying you are so much more than just the dual system that they keep propagating. But I'll explain this a little later. Okay. We're still through this, we're still on this game drive, and we're going to be looking at all these animals on either side of us, and we're going to explore and investigate each one of them. So relax into this, because it's a lot of information to cross through. Okay, so energy field must be understood that you exist within that you exist within it, and it exists within you. You have an energy field, and then your energy field interacts with the energy field that is around you. And the energy field is, like I said, the office space where I am. Maybe your house, maybe your dining room, maybe your car, wherever, in whatever way. Okay. So if you understand that, you understand that the energy field is where the cooking of the thoughts start to happen. The forms of thoughts start to form in there. All right. So here's the part about the duality, which is very important to take note of. So it is conceptual. The idea of duality is required for a mirror-like effect. Okay? And duality is created as an ideology or a belief that it can ascertain and support the idea of polarity. It plays a benevolent or a destructive role. Good intentions and thought forms created ordinarily create benevolent forces, and evil, destructive ones, and do the same, as well as with technology. That also comes in. So the premise on duality is focused on the digital straw man, which allows, or the digital avatar, as they like to use that new age term, for the thought form to be subjected to, or to be used by, or used by yourself, tainted or other. In other way, people can tarnish your digital image, okay? Because the digital image is connected to you on a personal level or an impersonal level. So in other words, as long as there are duality focused people, they will believe that that is what they can do. There will always be those that believe then that there will be masters and there will be slaves. You know, so who gets where in what pack order there is. Okay, not pecking order, packing order. Because literally that's how they are creating stacking of the consciousness for a multiplicity belief system. Anyway, duality is a belief system that was perceived and motivated for the outright purpose to project into the energy field and perhaps the realm heart field as well, thoughts and ideas in which thought forms would become manifested in order to affirm certain polarized ideas. Okay, and that's basically that. Duality was an actual invented ideology which came from Plato. Later on, philosophy and religion had to be split apart from one another, which is where I think the problem came in, actually, because religion is a subjective idea or an opinion of philosophy. Okay, that's basically what I think. And so they created duality and said, okay, no, split them up, because there has to be this separate, we got to make money from something. All right. The Platonists, there's a lot of them. They operate within that space of belief. They believe that the soul is imprisoned in the body and can only become holy or sanctified once you are dead. Go live somewhere in a cave where you belong, Plato, because it was because of your thoughts. You obviously were the one that orchestrated the whole building plan for the Republic to exist. Anyway, so let's move along. Therefore, a dual system creates a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde scenario at all times. If you look at it from an objective perspective, you can actually see it. Day and night, there's no in between, there's no dusk, there's no sunrise, there's no nothing, it's just a black-white. So it perpetuates all these things. It perpetuates the ideas of racism. It's just wherever there's polarization in certain ways, presented through a socio-political or economical system, there are these things that come through. Duality was invented to split philosophy from religion, and so fractured the objective, holistic view of philosophy and God and nature and man. It split it up. It broke it up into parts so that people could actually understand what they're looking for. So it was supposedly created that way for that purpose. But but I disagree, because it's because of that is why the system in this reality with the common age of man is in this place, the way that it exists. Okay, so every active thought enters into the world as an active intelligence. A creature of the mind is birthed within the same original intensity with which the thought was sent out as intentionally. This thought is called cerebral action. Okay, cerebral action, it's in the back of your head, which generates these thoughts forms within the thought field itself, reaching as many people all at once or certain targeted people also. The cerebrum, as you can see in the image, is the largest part of the brain that controls a wide range of functions, including motor control, sensory perception, very important, language, cognitive thought, memory, emotions, hearing, and vision. In other words, almost everything that is in this head of yours is controlled from that point that has to do with perception. All right? That's why I always say you need to start to learn to understand what it means to perceive something. It means you can look at something but not directly at it. Look at what it presents itself to be, so that you are objectively observing it without it drawing you in or grabbing your eyes and putting it there. It's divided into two hemispheres. Your brain naturally is divided into two hemispheres, each further subdivided into lobes, of course, and each lobe represents a specific function of a specific function. Okay, so it controls your five senses: language, working memory, behavioral personality, movement, and learning logic and skills. So you can understand that if that is essentially taken control of, then essentially they've got control over your five senses, and they can do what they want with what you think, with the material that they present to you in this reality, in this realm. So thought forms and thought insertion in terms of group thinking is the next thing that you need to look at. This is also better understood as thought insertion, if not being able to manage, can also lead to some cases as a phenomenon often associated with psychotic disorders, especially schizophrenia. From a medical journal, the case of delusion is understood that delusion needs to be understood in relation to thought insertion, goes hand in hand with one another. There are also older examples such as MK Ultra, voice to skull, technologies used to also trigger certain thoughts for people to experience certain things, mass media warfare, and reality controlling aspects. So if they can control your thoughts through certain ideas that the aliens are going to come here and devastate war of the worlds, which they seem to be propagating right now. I mean, how many times can they make one movie of the same shit? Then there will be people, there will be new ones, there will be new peanuts in the packets that will propagate that idea that there is going to be a mass extinction event, which will be either from the sky, the stars, the planets, the comets, okay, or from aliens still coming from the sky. In other words, heaven is making war with earth, which is contrary to what it really is about. So when they propagate these info dumps or data, they also release to the public books such as the Monroe Institute Gateway Program, which was studied by the CIA, the De Silva method, and the binaural beats, and so many of these magicians that pop up, when they present all these books for people to start helping themselves, get rich quicker or something. For the rich man, poor man, I think that was another thing. So they deliberately project that information into the system because they give you the chaos magic is there. Then they look at the person that will create certain things, but some people don't want to bite. So okay, let's give them books on how to cook an egg, how to have a hen that lays golden eggs forever. The De Silva method, the Lopsam Rampa, the whatever you want to call it. I can't think of them all at once because there's so many of them. It's just literally like Smarties in a packet. So there's too many colors. You can't figure out one or the other. Skittles, you know. So essentially, literally, there are millions and millions of these projects that are running all at the same time. It happens through music, through media, through movies, through everything that has color, music, sound to it that actually keys into the five senses. That is how they can actually take control of your cerebrum, so that your thoughts will become programmed, so that you will assist them in creating the thought form of mass extinction idea, or alien warfare, or mass famine, or mass zombie apocalypse, or whatever, so that you can help them build it, because they don't have that inside of them. They can't make it up by themselves. They're not enough of them. So they need the public to be willful participants. So therefore they believe that they can actually do this, and it's your free will to decide if you want to accept it or not. You know, wink wink, nudge nudge. It is the functioning of the thoughts in themselves that actually assist these programs to start generating the way that it should be. I think now is the Terminator fear thing, because right now it's actually boy bot, girl bot is lover of human type of crap. So they're throwing that in. The bicentennial man, I think, is the drive energetically in which they want to direct it towards. So AI is all fine. Essentially, remember what I said to you about AI, and I've actually broken that up as well, is it's algorithms that have been pre-programmed to receive impulses by certain key logging words and algorithmic patterns. That's basically it. It's like, remember when your phone used to have predictive texting? Back in the day, it used to be a pain because it would correct your words into certain ways, because the idiot that put it into the phone in the first place said, this is how you say the word correctly. So they downloaded a dictionary in there so that the bot, the algorithm, which can be programmed to use the right word, if the first three letters of your word that you're writing is T-R-A, and it'll correct it to tractor when you were actually wanting to say trap. You don't type your personal details on your phone anywhere. You tell your friend physically, if you can, about certain things. The focus on groupthink, and then there's the delusion of how to formulate the groupthink, or the thought in the group itself is delusional at the worst case. What I'm saying is that the same thing about the bee and the spider that uses the same flower, one creates poison and the other one creates honey. There are three rules for groupthink. The adoption of a common view or belief not based on objective reality. That is a rule for group thinking. Number two, the establishment of a consensus of right-minded people or an in-group. And the third one, the need to treat the views of anyone who questions the belief as wholly unacceptable. So groups, various interested groups such as journalists and even governments in the 21st century have subscribed to this way of thinking, which with deeply disturbing results. Such behavior has led to culture of fear, which we can see everywhere, heralded by countless examples throughout history, from revolutionaries to warlike elements. It has caused countless errors in judgment and the division of society into a highly polarized oppositional faction-like behavior. This is duality in a political arena. So from the behavior of the controversial Rhodes must fall, movement to the sacking of James Damore of Google, society's attitudes towards gender equality, the LGBTQ, XYZ, and whatever else thing is another thing, the Iran-Iraq war, the European existence is collapsing, dream thing, nightmare, careers and lives, all of these things that are all based on a political idea of a delusion that is being pushed into group thinking, so that there's nothing else that can ever come out of that in any better way or any good way. So, right. There is no difference between reality materialization, thought forms, in the metaphysical understanding of it, versus what you are actually experiencing in the realm itself. No difference at all. Okay? A thought form has no color. It has a direction where it's coming from, and the group in itself forms the creed of that thought form. All right. So reality is based on the thought field in which you exist within. Your reality is based on where you are within your thoughts, in where you exist within, and based on that, so be it your own or another, a reality change is a thought field alteration. By altering your thoughts and intentions, you recreate or create another reality to function within. All right. So these are all parts of this beast that we're looking at, with a few exceptions, which I'll be bringing in for you right now to see how actually far it can go. Thought forms infect or impact consciousness, like I've explained to you. You know that all is mind. You know that your thoughts are exactly powerful. It interacts with the field around you in a very scientific way, metaphysical way. It also impacts into the environment where you are, and certain people, places, or things. And it can be infectious, or it can be something that can actually impact another person's consciousness, including your own. You also know that your thoughts can alter or impact your own life. So if you want to create something, because I can hear there's some people that are actually thinking like, I keep doing this and it doesn't work. That's because, and I'm going to tell you right now in here, and I'm going to cut into what I'm saying, is you want some change to happen for you, but you keep focusing on the things that cannot be changed in your life. So if you keep focusing on the things that are like horrible for you and you want change to happen, your focus needs to shift from seeing everything as horrible to something that is in solution to what is horrible. Believing is the food source of a thought form. Believing whatever you do or do not, observing what it is that you're experiencing is also a key factor in how you are experiencing your reality. So if you keep looking at red and you say you hate red apples, you're going to keep being given red apples because you have a lot of emotion connected to hating red apples. So if you want change to happen, focus on everything but the red apples. It's that simple. Okay. You don't want to be controlled by mind-controlled slaves and minions for apocalyptic structure to happen. Then focus on your garden. Focus on your veggie garden. Focus on your fish pond. Focus on your fish tank. Focus on yourself. Focus on your feet. Focus on your arms, your hands, whatever. Focus away from it. That's why I keep saying, keep doing that. I've brought in an effect here called the Mandelbrot effect. And that is an example of a dualistic polarization in which there is mass concentration on a certain belief in order for it to become more popular, so that it inherently can overtake and create its own reality, because that's essentially what's going on. This is why there's this obsessive focus on rituals. They keep doing these same ritual things at certain times of the year. I mean, right now they're obviously doing it like mad because it's a full moon for it to happen right now. So, and also just keep in mind that when full moon does come out, there's also a time for parasites to come into existence, everything is suddenly released. The eggs are released of the parasite and it fills the body. So you need to cleanse yourself physically as well. Get an antiparasitic cleanse. A thought field in a fractal state can be observed as a Mandelbrot effect, because what happens is a thought becomes fractaled because so many other people are believing the same thing and doing the same thing, but they're all, like I said to you from the very beginning, essentially so focused on repeating the same information because they think they can get it from people. So they keep repeating the same information, including the grammar error of the same story, without actually giving any foresight to it or any research given to it, or actually even looking at it in an objective perspective. And that creates the fractal, where they then, people that function in that way, perhaps society in itself becomes a fractaled reflection of itself, where this is where the whole idea about the smarty box existence in the smart city thing happens, where everybody's a little pixel on a chip or a microchip on a motherboard, which could also be a Borg, because duality was created for the purpose of multiplicity, where I will discuss that. I'm not saying literally, I'm saying we're coming towards that point of discussion. Okay, so let me explain the following to you. Control, it is again very important to understand that for the most part, if you actually challenge the energies, these particular thought forms, you have to literally be like flint. You have to move really fast, but you have to have your heart intact. Okay, heart has to be intact. If you investigate things and you observe these types of groups or organizations, cults, societies, etc., then you will have realized that they have created their own egregor to give them control or protection or success in their lives, so long as the egregor can stay alive. There will be a psychological deficit within the connection of the group itself, who have actively made sure that they could create a thought form to become a guardian of the group or the religion or the organization or the society or the order and these people are almost psychologically not okay. It actually creates a psychopathic nature within the group itself, where then people go and do things to actually appease this thought form, this thought form, this egregor, the servitor, this tulpa, this whatever you want to call it. All of these things require some sacrifice from the person in which it has been created from. It's like having to look after the demiurge, but it's going to keep snapping at you because it's blind and it's got these long teeth and it keeps snapping at you because it wants your blood to keep feeding it. So some patients in medical facilities actually believe that, some people in medical facilities actually report that they can hear voices that are not their own. And these are not people that have passed away that are in spirit. No. These are thought forms that actually are it's in between. It's like an amorphous cloud of something that functions, that they can't really give you the shape of what it looks like. They can only tell you that it's like this puffy cloud of dark shadow. You can't see anything more to it. It's just a shadow. That is a thought form. Okay, a thought form from with whatever. Could be your own. Could also be from the cult that you have lived within, that has made sure that you can't leave the cult unless you've done certain things, or you're forever in the cult even if you've left the cult type of belief system. And these people then report that they can hear these voices, they see shadows in the corner, they see faces changing, they see things that are connected to when they lose control. They lose control over their entire physical form. Like I said to you, remember, it's a cerebrum effect. It controls that part of your mind, okay? It also depends on how much belief and faith you've given to that entity, the Yaldabaoth god, or the Baal god, or the Zeus god, or whatever you want to call it, thing, in whatever circuit or cult you function within. For the most part, those who wish to wipe out the world are keyed into those thought fields that are psychopathic in nature. I think that basically speaks for itself. Therefore, it is vital, as I've said, to have full control over your mind, body, soul, and spirit, and be in total control of how you think and how you experience and what you express within yourself and with others around you. It's also important to understand, to get to know who you are. What is your nature? Do you really like pizza, or are you actually a salad person? Type of example. Sit on your own throne inside the seat of your soul. Throne, chair, seat, whatever you want to call it. Stay there. Stay in there in awareness. Doesn't mean I'm saying become locked into your body, because I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying have an objective perspective, because what is not objective is if your thoughts go and follow the red herring. That means you're not objective. You're reactive. Okay. And therefore you fall for anything and everything. Your thoughts radiate from your mind through your feelings and project into the energy field of your thought field. Let me just remind you of that, which contributes to reality creation. The thought field, the access point between how your soul connects from within you towards what is outside of you for the notion to start growing. Uses your heart energy for that to become activated. You will constantly experience cycles of your life where you will understand things in this way, and then you will find yourself being distracted by it as well. But at all times, it's very important that you take note, that you at all times focus and work on it every day to stay on that seat, so that nobody else can sit on that seat. All right. That's a daily process. That's an everyday thing. You only have one day every time, and one day is 24 hours, really. So reality in its interaction with you is not static. It is interactive all the time. Your thoughts can change and alter things all the time in your life. It's very important to realize that realities are not multiple, but multidimensional, because of the dimension in which humans function within themselves, whether they are in this dimension of subjection or in the dimension of being able to observe the dimensionality of the particular principle that's being projected onto them. Either way. Okay, so that is why it's very important to understand that we're not talking about multiplicity or multiple realities, but multidimensional impacts on reality itself, which creates fields of reality to function within. All right. So another thing that's important is also to realize that thought forms can also bind certain souls in a particular belief system, or in a contract, or a soul contract, even with previous existences of previous people in previous ages, or even being perceived as ancestral, when in actual fact some of those may actually be thought forms of a particular way a family had existed back in the day. So in other words, the whole idea or the premise of building life because you have to struggle, and then because you struggle, that's the belief system that everything to you must come with great cost, because then you can then be rewarded with great reward. And that in itself keys again into the duality, which keeps the person who is in the belief of that experience, not the traditional connections to the ancestors. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the belief in itself that one has to struggle in order to be rewarded at the end, which, in other words, that is a thought form. many of you think, why is this even allowed? And the fact that it's permitted is to let you know that you can decide whether you want a bee or a flower or a spider. And there's a flower. Everyone can use the flower. You need to decide how you're going to make honey from it, or you're going to make poison from that flower, and you're going to use it with your free will to do this or that. Interestingly enough, I found a book which is called Thought Forms, written in 1901, written by Annie Besant and C.W. Leadbeater, with sketches that are provided as they perceived or experienced clairvoyantly, looked into the auras of certain mediators, priests, and ordinary folks. And so for those who need to know, Annie Besant was a theosophist and became involved in social reform movements. She joined the Fabian Society, which still exists even today, and also influenced the British political movements of that time, including her work is still being perpetuated as we speak. So it's important to realize that take the information from whence it comes and understand what their purpose was in understanding and even perhaps training people in the occult, cult, or other societies through observation from their experiments as well. But aside from that, take it from whence it comes. Okay, I'm using all the sources that I could find on these particular subjects. Okay, so on their findings, selfish ambition appears as a dirty orange cloud. They've given color codes to what they've discovered and certain descriptions of emotions that they could pick up clairvoyantly and empathically, so psychically. And at some point, some of it was streaked with hook-like tendrils. Now, I think I've seen those hook-like tendrils. They sometimes look like worms or parasites, which is actually very interesting because it's essentially sent out to pull energy away from the person. So in other words, there's a vampiric element attached to it. Explosive anger erupts as danger-shaped scarlet flashes edge in black. Anyway, there's a whole host of color-like things that they describe here. Very much colors the way the thought forms are perceived as well. Remember, we have to be objective in how we observe these beasts as we look at them, so that we can understand which beast is color-coded or understood to be in what particular way because of the observer of that particular energy field or thought form. Okay, so they made it a study to try and understand thought forms. They also came to the conclusion that it's essentially living patterns of energy molded by the very hopes, fears, ambitions, and devotions that pass through the mind. They also made it clear that they have observed thought formation through the aura, as I've just explained, and as you are able to see, you can actually see how the thoughts are formed in seeing the anomalous entities or energies or formations within the aura field. Thought forms are no bigger than soap bubbles, others repeated and emotionally charged, condensed into impressive shapes that cling to us, travel outward, or fuse with similar forms in the psychic environment. When many people sustain the same idea, their individual creations merge into a vastly more powerful collective presence, an egregor or a group soul, end quote. Very important to keep that in mind, okay? In short, what is very important is that even if malefic projections happen towards an innocent person, depending where that innocent person is within their own thoughts, those malefic thoughts bounce straight back to the same amount, to the sender that has sent it to that person, because of the way in which the person that is inadvertently receiving negative thinking or projection can actually repel it without even being aware of it, because they're focused on, oh, how wonderful my garden is today. I'm loving the butterflies that are floating around today. The weather looks sunny and peachy. Bounces that shit back. Okay. depending on where you are in your thoughts. If you are if you have a tendency to become like, everyone's following me, everyone's gonna attack me, I'm gonna experience this attack, and I have to, put an electrical fence around my house, then that's gonna definitely settle into your thoughts. It's gonna be there, it's gonna stay there, and it's gonna just perpetuate, and you're gonna become part of that group. You're gonna become a group with the person that's sending you the negative thoughts. Hence where I'm thinking the psychic readers, tarot readers or whatever, and maybe spiritualist people are often confused with the whole idea about twin souls. This is why I'm saying twin soul doesn't exist, because essentially it's a projection of your energy coming from you or to you from another person. You don't want to have another person mimic you. Really, do you want that? Then go look at yourself in the mirror. That's basically what that is. So that whole idea or that premise of twin souls is bullshit. Okay? It's a dangerous thing to actually even approach or investigate in. There's another thing that they seem to be bringing up as well, which I've noticed is on the side here, the idea about having a kingdom spouse. Did you know that actually existed? They believe so strongly that they have a kingdom spouse, which is a male or female entity that is supposedly the person's other half that never made it into the physical world, which is actually also very dangerous, because that in itself is a thought form that exists in order to feed on the person that is longing to be with another person. Okay, very dangerous as well. It's a parasitic experience, unless some people like to be the vampire blood bag. That's basically up to them. Okay, so the quality of your thought determines the coloration of your aura, that we know now by now. We also know that the personal aura is perceived as the energy field. Like I've said to you, they say here very interestingly, because thought forms hover in and around the aura, they create a psychic climate or a field of resonance that others intuit, especially the empath, who can walk into a room after a heated quarrel and you may be able to feel the air still buzzing with that quarrel. They say that the elemental, it's very important, this part that they say is the elemental in itself, the essence or that entity, that thing, is a half intelligent life which surrounds which you are experiencing or perceiving once you start to see it for its existence. In other words, like I said to you, a shadow being doesn't really have much of a shape. If you say, I need to see who you are, and I've done this many times, it disappears, then it means it doesn't really exist. I've seen the difference between actual people that have died, their spirit form, and people that have sent thought forms. There's a massive difference between those elements in itself. You do not lose your shape of your essence of who you are when you pass over. You leave a print of your existence behind, which is a field for your spirit to interact with the people that have passed away for a short period. Okay. Other things such as thought forms that are elemental entities or things that are existing, like weird things, I'm calling them all beasts of the game drive, because I can't give them any other name, and I don't want to give a name to it either. Function in a way that it cannot actually generate itself as an actual form. If you've become, if you've been involved in the certain occult orders and you stayed in there for a long time, some people who are there, and you can see if you do a little bit of research on people that have experienced that interaction with, let's say, an entity that's called Satan in the Satanist group, that they cannot always tell you what its purpose is, because for the most part it often presents itself as an amorphic entity that is relevant to what is in the observer of that energy for what they think it means. Like there's this one guy who had an interview with another guy about being a retired Satanist, and he's not a Satanist anymore, and his first experience was seeing Jesus in the temple of Satanic temple, and Jesus saying to him he has to do certain things. Now, the idea about coloring in the devil as Satan or whatever is also erroneous, as I've said before, because the devil is essentially presenting itself as an image of light. And this is why the image of light counter-connects as a thought form within the light that is the same vibration or frequency that interacts with that entity, and therefore gives it a presence so that it can actually exist within that space where you are with what you're going to be doing as a whatever person, a high priest, whatever. And so therefore the same thing applies, like I've said to you before when I discussed the understanding of the Solomon magic, that essentially people that have disincarnated are being used. Actual spirit is used for the insertion of certain sigils to do things for them. And then you get the other aspect where thought forms are being used to do the same thing. Either way, one is parasitizing on the other in whatever way you look at it. Okay, so, and images are holding those things in place. What is important in the following examples is the thought in itself in the esoteric, mythological or metaphysical explanation of that particular event is the idea about the fallen angels, which is, of course, as I've said to you, also based on light emitting from the eyes into the field for it to then fall or drop into the field of matter so that the thought field can manufacture from the angle of the light, angle of the light, to bring an entity up that could present itself as an angel or angular being, which is where the Metatron's cube comes in as well. For those of you who may not be familiar with that, please go through the material. There's a link at the bottom that will describe to you about Metatron. Again, that goes to the Josephic Messianic material book review that I did, where I explained to you what Metatron is. It's just based on an angle of light of a massive thought form. People give the thought form more clothes. They give it more structure. They just want it to become a reality for them so that they can have a supernatural experience. Like I said from the very beginning, in the beginning, there's very small percent of supernatural energy that's actually present, because the most of it is polluted with a ton of thought forms. And then it's important to realize that some of these references in which thought forms are perceived to function within the following: astral manipulation, which means a core concept in creating thought forms involving the manipulation of subtle energies or the astral plane to shape and project these mental constructs. Number 2, visualizations. Thought forms are often created and maintained through focused visualization techniques where the practitioner imagines the thought form in detail, imbuing it with desired qualities and energy. It's got to look like a My Little Pony. Willpower and intent. The practitioner's will and focused intent are crucial for imbuing the thought forms with power and directing its influence. Right? Vibration and color. Some occult traditions associate specific vibrations and colors with different thought forms, further definition or defining their nature and purpose. And how are they used? Okay, the examples here are: thought forms can range from simple shapes and symbols to more complex entities like guardians, familiars, or even entire astral landscapes. They are used in the following for the purpose to: number 1, manifestation magic, By creating and projecting thought forms, practitioners aim to bring about desired outcomes in the physical world. We've spoken about this before. Number 2, protection, as in thought forms can be used as shields or guardians to ward off negative influences or energies. Number 3, personal development, as in creating thought forms can also be a way to develop specific qualities or skills such as confidence or focus. Number 4, magical rituals. Thought forms are often employed in magical rituals to enhance the energy and effectiveness of the ritual. Number 5, examples in practice, memory palaces. Very important, because they create a place where they create these little things to experiment with it, to see if they can do certain things for them. It's like a person who creates his own laboratory in his head. He uses a memory palace. Okay. Some practitioners build elaborate mental landscapes or memory palaces to store and access information or to facilitate astral travel. Then there's the next, number 6, God forms and angelics. Advanced thought forms might take the form of deities or angelic beings, often used for invocation or empowerment. It's always about empowerment in the material world. It never is for anything other than that. I've always said it, it always is the case, because why else does it exist? Okay. It just keeps the whole hunger to have material existence venerated and worshipped in a loop. Next one, number 7, homunculus. A more advanced and complex thought form, the homunculus is an animated entity that can last for a limited time and is often associated with alchemy, which comes from the exploration from Aleister Crowley. Okay, that is where it initially comes from. We also have the jinn and all of these other things, and these may be part and part, half alive, half sentient, half thought form, and spirit enclosed. But that's something for another day. Then we have tulpas. Tulpas are thought forms that are believed to be created and sustained through the power of the mind and are considered to be beings that can take on any form or appearance. In Tibetan Buddhism, funnily enough, it's a holy Buddhism, tulpas are believed to be able to manifest in the physical world and interact with their surroundings in various ways. In essence, the creation and manipulation of thought forms is a powerful technique in any mental practice, magic or other, requiring focused intention, visualization skills, and a belief in the power of the mind to influence reality. Thank you, Disney, for that. Thought forms used in magic or built for magic, such as, this is a subject that I will approach briefly, is for the motive that dictates the use of magic in its degrees, various degrees. So whatever is used for it or used with it. Magic by any other name and its ethic of creations. Does ethics exist? It doesn't seem to be in these cases, although there is a thing such as karma that seems to step in as an ethical law that sets things in place. So that does exist. And karma is an effect or from a cause of something that was created so that it can actually impact back. So therefore that does exist. That is, I would say, perhaps the ethical aspect to certain thought forms that are out of control or people. So therefore, white or black in terms of magic are again dualistic, but we'll leave it there, are again only relative to the polarization on which the magic is practiced within. You do find those who practice these within the two opposing dual forces, also relative to left hand or right hand path. And so again, it's all part of the same coin. It's part of the same dualistic structure That's an ideology. Anyway, Theosophists consider magic to be motive and purpose, while white is supposedly altruistic, while black is supposedly malefic. Quote, end quote. I'm not saying it, they say it. Okay. I don't personally perceive it in that way, because duality is the problem already to begin with. There is energy, and then there's the manipulation of energy. It's not magical, because you're not a magician. Some of you are not. You've not been in those, and you can still create thought forms. Okay, so you don't have to be a magician or to be under the power of the subjected magi so that you can have the power of the Jedi. Okay, you are essentially a creative being, and you can create thought forms in a bad way or in a good way. Either way. You don't need rituals for that, unless you wish to worship your own thought form, and then it becomes an egregore, which is leading us into the next section here. So egregores is an upgrade of a thought form once it's being worshipped. That's essentially it with ritual. So from the book The Magician, His Training and His Work by W.E. Butler, in 1982, page 155, Butler writes, a clear idea of the nature, let me just say, quote, a clear idea of the nature of the magical egregore or group form should be built up in the mind in order that the aspirant may understand what part he plays in the whole complex scheme, and thereby may know how closely he is guided and aided in his chosen work, end quote. This is essentially the power of thought forms that are the examples presented in the following from the same page. Templars who worshipped the head of John the Baptist and incorporated it into the idol of the construction of Baphomet. Essentially, the background to Baphomet, just in short, is really coming from Islamic thought form beliefs as well, religions put in together and actually mixed the whole thing up and created this whole thing that's called the Baphomet, while in a sense becomes an egregore. And so, as I've said to you, Solomonic magic also uses the same principles. Okay, certain magicians use servitors to serve a purpose. And they say this: a servitor is a magical entity created through focused intent and energy to perform specific tasks or serve a particular purpose. They are essentially artificial entities, often described as thought forms, that are programmed to act on behalf of the magician. Servitors are distinct from other magical entities like egregores and or elementals, as they are typically simpler and more directly controlled by their creator. And any person who focuses on creating a something for the purpose of another thing is just dabbling with creating a thought form. How you believe in it and what you give to it from yourself, feeding it with your energy or a part of your psyche, is what determines the degree. Like I've said, you can call it Alice in Wonderland, it's going to be the same thing. Okay, the naming of these things is what gives it a particular substantial existence for the purpose of training people to become magicians. All right, the purpose to create these things are for the purpose to uphold the duality system in place, because that is essentially what they need in order for them to be able to seed that entity or that energy or that thing so that it becomes something bigger, whatever. Okay, so with it comes ritual, with it comes certain things that have to be done. You have to do certain things that are contrary, that would supposedly be like an offering to help that thing to grow even more. It's like actually creating kombucha. You need to keep feeding that SCOBY sugar so that it can break it down, so that it can create some sort of essence for you to drink from. Okay, and you need to use tea as well. So that's basically it. It's like feeding an enzyme, an organism, a thing, for it to become something better. Okay, so, and what is an egregore in metaphysical terminology? An egregore only becomes noted or presented when there's a lot of ritual, like I've said, and program involved that requires a lot of sacrifice that comes from out of your essence for that thing to exist. And so the most important aspect to consider is thought forms are human derived. It's human made, okay, man made. That's what it is. It's not supernatural. They like to believe it has supernatural power over it or over them, but it's not supernatural, okay, because humans are essentially either natural or they believe themselves to be in the supernatural. Whatever it is, if there's something that can be explained in a way that creates a miraculous effect, then that is essentially what the whole thing is about, is to whoa, freak out and create drama. Egregores, when there's a ritual and sacrifice, involve the belief that they would want to create a good egregore. Let's create the Archangel Michael in our circles, and then we'll have Archangel Michael oversee our circle while we pray for peace on the world. And there it happens. It keys into the Lucis Trust, it keys into the seven rays, because almost automatically those who focused on the idea of Archangel Michael had keyed it into the Solomonic magic rituals back in the day, and then mixed it up a little bit with the Golden Dawn, and then brought in the seven rays of Archangel Michael and Metatron and Gabriel, etc., etc., etc. Alright, they perpetuated the same thought form that they've read up about, that they've been seeded with. Okay. And again, if you're in circles and you do these sort of things, that's up to you. If you think you're creating something good in its essence to try and protect you and protect the world or heal the world, it just contributes to other thought forms, which actually just creates a chimera effect and then creates something completely contrary, and you lose the essence of the idea of Archangel Michael that used to look after you. So that is another thing that you need to be mindful of your thoughts and how you use them. In terms of the following things, we'll look at the next part here: magical practices or practitioners using thought forms for the following examples: using as protection, as I've said to you, ritual ceremony, egregore deity worships. Ritual creates wraps up large emotions into one place to focus on, projecting large amounts of energy into a particular structure or building, or focus on places, people, or things, or deities that are personified as gods or goddesses, ideas or platforms for archetypes, politicians, celebs who split from the false image or tulpa collective of groups, sending this energy to specific areas, etc., etc. Using the lesser banishing ritual then is used to protect themselves. Quickly draw a pentagram on the ground and let's just stay in there because we're going to be safe from the thing that we've just created, and just sit there like three little piggies in a wooden hut. Okay, so essentially that's another thing that happens because you've brought that thing in place. You read about H.P. Lovecraft stuff in your subconsciousness, you watched the previous horror movie, and you created the thing in your head because it's like this weird zombie thing with black eyes, and there it is. It's not an alien, it's your thought form that you've created there. An actual alien presence is existing within the realm. You won't even know it, that it's there. You will not know because you are so focused on the thought forms that you've created from Disney and whatever else that you have no concept of what is actual and what is not actual. And when I say you, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about you who is focusing and dabbling in these things that may wish to actually come out of it so that you are less targeted and less attacked by it. So when multiple people hold the same ideas with similar feelings, their thought forms interlock. The composition of the egregore becomes a sort of a semi-independent psychic apparition or entity that hovers and over the group that feeds it. Okay, remember, it's like the creating a SCOBY. The SCOBY is already there, but they're feeding it and it becomes something bigger. So it becomes in the shape, it grows in the shape of a bottle, which will then grow and has to be fed, otherwise it dies. Okay, so they have to keep feeding it rituals and things that will, like they say, create an altar or an altar to where you can go and sacrifice things or offer things up and say thank you to the gods, then thank you to the angels, and thank you to these things. You know, it's all external is what I'm trying to say. Thought forms are externally projected and you worship that thing that you've just built. What the? Just think about it, okay? Long-standing spiritual orders cultivating protective luminous egregores through prayer and ritual. New members immediately sense an atmosphere when they approach that place. Left unexamined, an egregore can outlive its founders. Very important. Nudging the group along habitual lines, constructive or corrosive. Okay, so if you want to get out of that political party and every time you want to do it or you get out of the door, they threaten you, they say they're gonna you for it, then that's part of that egregor's control over those members. Okay, so the only way for you to be able to leave that group in a safe way is to be able to cultivate your own independent thoughts as much as you're able to do, and then slowly exit the other way. And that means exit into a thing that is actually a replacement for that thing in why you wanted to join that group in the first place. So focus on the family or focus on a job somewhere in Portugal, whatever. Either way, that would be the thing to do. You would have to create something else for you to be able to swing out from that control structure of that egregore in order to go to another thing that you create for yourself so that you can have a foot out of that building. And that's just for some, that's important. Okay, so from the book The Great Secret by Eliphas Levi, Chapter 10, The Magnetism of Evil, page 127. I've discussed this book before, but I'll discuss it again. Has an array of egregores as an examples. Levi refers to the powers of nature and the cosmos as egregores. Okay, so because there's a lot of ritual that's done with regards to the celestials, with regards to the planets and all of these things, people worshipping the system overlay. Okay. These colossal forces have sometimes taken a shape and have appeared in the guise of giants, and also is referred to in the book of Enoch as egregores as well. Levi later claims, discussing the planets, quote, governed by those genii, Genii, which were formed or termed the celestial watchers or egregores by the ancients, close quote. Further on in this article, he relates the egregore to the Kabbalistic Adam Kadmon. That is the collective giant, or in some cases also the collective golem. To the Anakim in the Bible, guess where Star Wars comes from? And generally speaking, to natural powers operating the world and to their analogies as they have been expressed in myths in various cultures and where he has done that. He says, quote, this is why we reject the mythology of the egregores, finally and absolutely, close quote, because he's afraid. He's seen how dangerous these things can be, and it can actually take people, it can actually destroy people. We're now going into Richard Dawkins' stuff, the meme thing. I'm just touching very briefly on it. While Dawkins has discussed the concepts that are similar to an egregore, he does so without the metaphysical connotations, as it says from the page that I've linked this from, quote, to explain. He uses a concept of the meme in his book, The Selfish Gene, to explain the spread of ideas and cultural practices, which can be seen as an analogous to the idea of an egregore influencing behavior, but without the mystical or spiritual element, quote. It says here, quote, next, a meme, Dawkins's meme. A meme is an idea that is capable of self-replication and mutation and is therefore subject to evolutionary pressures. Memes spread between human hosts in the same way that germs do. And like germs, some are good and some are bad. It's the wrong word there, but anyway, they all have their own unique strategies for survival. And remember what I told you about full moon. That's when this comes out. So some are useful pieces of advice and technology that you wish to share, and some are artistically compelled and demand your attention, and some are just funny. Close quote. It's important that we note that Richard Dawkins is really a contradiction unto himself, because he proclaims that he is vehemently against the entire idea of metaphysical experience in terms of what he understands to be gods or goddesses and all of that stuff. He says he's completely against all of those things, when in actual fact he really his work is then directed to transhumanism, which is a contradiction, because he incorporates a philosophy to sustain transhumanism with other work that he's written. So essentially, fox in the hen house, I'd say. Very important here, are thought forms independent beings? For most material, those who are connected to these thought forms and made studies of them refer to it as actually having a semi-consciousness, which is actually quite interesting. Later to develop these thought forms into concepts of, or elementals, is what they would call that. So once it starts to have a semi-consciousness to it, it actually then becomes known as an elemental. See, again, these words, these names, these labels that are given to these things, that is just a thought form, depending on how much you've given to it or not. It's just a SCOBY. A SCOBY is a SCOBY, okay? There is a belief that those who focus on creating these thought forms, egregores or servitors, really all the same thing, like I've just said, all worshipping the dualistic religious ideology that allows polarization to take place, so that it can become a fractaled, multiplying thing, actually. That's where we're going towards. And in that way, it's important that we need to also look at the following thing here called a tulpa, because then it becomes a little bit more developed. It now starts to develop and become a little bit more actual, and it has a bit of a persona as well, which is really what you've given it, based on how much you've given it of yourself, of course. It's like you're creating your own energy of yourself. Anyway, it says here, in tulpas in Tibetan Buddhism are portrayed as phantom forms created through intense, purposeful concentration, and the intention is to instill or install a certain path and life for this group, egregore, to exist within. Anyway, so there's this very interesting thing here called Azathoth, which is a H.P. Lovecraftian construct to explain to you something about how the entity is created, to have it believe in his head now that it is the hermetic seal that basically covers the entire realm. Okay, so Lovecraft referred to this thing as Cthulhu or Azathoth, which is actual fact as a thought. All right, remember that. Azathoth is perceived as a monstrous deity. This I've taken from a very interesting writing called How to the link is at the bottom, about Azathoth. It's essentially described in the same way as the demiurge. Okay, so obviously he's got serious issues in there. Azathoth is a monstrous deity from the world of H.P. Lovecraft, known as the blind idiot god and the ruler of all chaos. At the very center of the universe, Azathoth sits in its court of mindless entities, surrounded by the constant cacophony of their frenzied dancing and shrieking music. Though its true nature remains shrouded in mystery, it is said that Azathoth, its very presence drives those who gaze upon it to madness. So he describes here a little bit further. I just thought it was very interesting to put this in here for you. Azathoth is described as that said to reside at the center of the universe. Does man not think that it is at the center of the universe? Well, in their verse, yes, they think that. Surrounded by a court of mindless entities that constantly dance and play music to keep it satisfied. So it's at rave clubs. No, I'm kidding. These these entities are described as shapeless and amorphous with no definite form or feature, describing as a massive bloated being with no definite shape or form, and it's always in a state of flux, constantly changing and shifting as it feeds on the chaos and madness that surrounds it. Despite its immense size and power, Azathoth is completely blind and mindless, existing only to consume and destroy. I'll leave that there with you. You can draw your own conclusions in that. Anyway, it's just a thought form. Just remember that, and it doesn't actually exist. Okay, it's just his way of interpreting how these thought forms are actually just mindlessly existing to be fed. Maybe he's had bad experience with creating his own one and it just almost took him out or whatever. Anyway, the following thing is also very interesting. I will bring it in. It's called the Servitor. And it's from the link as well described, where the person explains that it's created by magical practitioners to be a magical servant. So there you go. You can have your kingdom spouse and you can have your kingdom servant. And you can create your own kingdom outside of you. Not ever inside, outside of you. So that's where you can function. And so does not have the mind of its own, does not supposedly have emotions, carries out tasks that is set out for them to do. Sounds a little bit like Azathoth. Servitor is presented as a piece of your psyche that is coming from the internal into the external. Through thought transference. Remember, thought transference and thought insertion. Okay, thought transference. Yeah. Servitors are also believed to be part of the subconsciousness, needing a sigil to activate it, like a power ring, like a Power Ranger, right? Using certain planetary alignments, meditations, and transcendental magic feed servitors with offerings and use in special code to activate it. Sounds like you're going into Google to sign up for your Gmail. So that's basically what that sounds like. Again, based on that. Then we have tulpamancy. Tulpas are created by magical practitioners to be companion spirits. So there you go. That's the transhumanist thing, because obviously the thought forms are not satisfying sexually enough. So now we're going to go to transhumanism to actually see if we can create a sex bot that would probably do the same thing. Anyway, just saying. It's supposedly very controversial, that requires a part of the psyche to split off for this particular purpose. And from this material, a person says that it can't be verified, that if it's actually real or not. Obviously, it's worth talking about because there's a little bit of a fear behind it when this person spoke about it, which you can actually pick up on. In any case, a person also says that it's uncharted territory and the effects have not yet been fully explored. So there's quite a few warnings there as well. However, Theosophists have referred to this, to the author of the book, Alexandra David Neal, who actually makes a study of tulpamancy, wrote in the book Magic and Mystery in Tibet that she eventually lost control over her tulpa and had to unmake it because it was devastating towards her. Okay, so Alexandra David Neal had already visited England, Switzerland. This is the author of that book. And she was studying under Madame Blavatsky's Theosophical Society, and she joined various other secret societies as usual. And she would reach the 30th degree of the mixed Scottish rite of Freemasonry, while feminist and anarchist groups greeted her with enthusiasm. Of course they did. Anyway, and the Theosophical Society was founded on November 17, 1875 in New York. It was established by Helena Blavatsky, Henry Steele Olcott, and William Quan Judge. Okay, his second name he gave himself because he believed he was probably the male version of Kuan Yin. Also says that the building of a tulpa is highly personal, and for some it may become so personal that they may hear the tulpa's voice in their heads, because the tulpa can develop its own voice. Much of how to build it is similar to the building of a servitor. It's also using sigils but enough said on this, of course. Right. So then the next thing, very interesting, very important to keep in mind, is the meaning of Paragogenesis, which is a word that comes along with the material from Richard Dawkins, his work that spreads out from there, branches from there. Paragogenesis is the technique of using meditation and directed attention to bring another consciousness into being within your brain. Deliberate practitioners of Paragogenesis, who call themselves tulpa mancers, have argued that Paragogenesis is remarkably similar to the daily prayer practiced by millions of Christians. Really? Okay. It is inevitable, they say, that a paragon, or created mind, in inverted commas, would come to exist in the head of a devout Christian, that a voice would appear which personally answered them in prayers. The term paragenesis is not a standard recognized term in biology or medicine. It appears to be misspelling or misunderstanding. You see what I mean about people making shit up? Anyway, that comes actually from pathogenesis, and pathogenesis is the context of disease and how it encompasses the disorder of the disease through the development and maintenance of a disease or disorder. So in other words, the word is derived from Greek roots meaning suffering or disease and creation. Tulpamancers explore and explain that chaos magic is essentially an egregor. A being is created from the invested will of a collective of people that form the chaos magic within its group thinking. And chaos magic is a magical tradition that emphasizes results, repeatability, and the scientific methods that they throw in, of course. But then you can see that it does seem to have an impact in society, because look at what happened in 2019. So chaos magicians believe that science is the proper way to understand magic. Reading about the traditions of the 20th century chaos magicians within the knowledge of Dawkins' discovery, it's difficult not to draw parallels. The author seems to think so. I'm not making the statement. This is from the site, quote, end quote. So according to chaos magicians, new gods can be created deliberately through collective applications of attention and devotion. A definitive shape unifying all these theories emerge. A very important note must be made here. This is from me now. Duality leads to multiplicity, leads to plurality, leads to becoming a smarty in a smarty box. In other words, plurality, multiplicity of consciousness is the focus, and this is where the rubber truly meets the road, based on what I've been saying. Duality, or the existence and belief of two opposing forces, chaos and order, polarization, that connect and create variations or variants, actually in this case, and interplay into natural phenomena and psychological issues further along. Okay. All because they think that they can create the universe, a universe, or whatever, or be king of the hill. So we're looking at social multiplicity here, such as this is an example. Important note here is, remember that because of duality as an ideology, its essential purpose was to separate philosophy and religion, so that multiplicity can become the next form of uh, stimulating in a Platonic, Plato influenced manner how society should function by having smarty boxes for smarties to live in. In other words, fractal experience. Okay. Those who created duality as a concept, as a belief system, including Plato, had hopes that it would create plurality and then multiplicity, so that they can create a system that can be dominated for the purpose. Like I said to you from the very beginning, you need a crowd who can be unruly and completely chaotic in order for you to introduce order so that you can dominate the crowd. From this, we can see the following thing here: the digital thought form that is based on the ideology or philosophy supposedly back in the day called monadology. And you can really look at it in the form of how algorithms are essentially created or used through trying to bring in quantum computing, which seems to be something that they wish to bring overall to the entire universe for all people to use it within obviously their controlled environment, or they can control everything through the quantum computing. Either way, it's not really important here. Thought form based on collectivistic group thinking. Monadology is essentially a belief system in which the fractal is seen as a whole of something of the bigger. So the micro is equal to the macro. In other words, pixels that form the same picture, millions of them all in one area. So essentially that's basically how an algorithm is created as well. In the same way, it can actually do its own self-function, can have little algorithms that can be like put together to do this or to do that. And when I say little algorithms or algorithms, really you're looking at scripts that are written for the purpose of actually checking certain information. Has to be online for that to actually happen, because you can't do it offline. Has to be online. So this is why this is such a extreme drive to get everybody all online, and that's the only way it functions, because it uses all of that energy from all of the input from the users to reform the predictability of people. So that's essentially what you're looking at in that way. And so again, the whole thing about groupthink is coming in here as well. It's very important that you take this in consideration, that even the whole digital thing about transhumanism and this whole AI fear frenzy drama drive thing and the algorithms are all part of the same thing. It's all part of creating a digital straw man or a thought form that can essentially do what they want it to do, to prepare people for whatever they want it to happen. But remember, you also have free will in order to accept this bullshit or to actually focus on something where you can actually use it or do with it what you need to in order for yourself to focus in something else. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying it's yes, it's evil, or no, it's not evil. I'm not saying any of these things, and none of the information that I've said here is either designed to ridicule or disconnect anybody from anything, other than to actually bring it very clearly, directly into focus for you, so that you can understand the very serious importance of a thought form that forms from within the mind, body, soul, and spirit. If there are some that are aware of their own spirit, of course. And this leads us to the last part, which is actually very important here as well, is that the focus, that there's some material that's written where what I've just told you about trying to create a digital thought form is referred to in a paper written. Here is a link where it explains blockchain as an egregor. Okay, so he writes here, the rise of the blockchain egregor is a paper that explores the emergence of cryptocurrencies like Dogecoin and Shiba Inu in the crypto carnival and their ties to the trickster archetype. See, there's the thought form created now, which is actually Mercury, which is mercurial, because Mercury used to be known as the trickster god. Okay, and it discusses the concept of tokens and the surge of tokenization in the crypto summer of 2020 to 2021. And this paper explains how Shiba Inu became a purely recursive token with no external measures of value. In other words, it became itself, its own thing. And this was then explored as a creation of an egregor, which are created intentionally or unintentionally by groups of people who share a common belief or interest. So it's important that you understand that the word egregor has been put into that particular paper, okay? Because it's something that is observed, it's something that's that's presenting itself. Groupthink needs a think tank. Just keep that in mind, that essentially it's always going to be ultimately about how people think, what can be inserted into the patterns for thoughts for people to take note on, and in what way can people essentially contribute in helping a think tank become something that is real, and for the think tank then to manufacture thought forms. Okay, you can look at it in the occult, the magical world, religious, politics, etc. Any rituals, it's the same thing. There's a group that thinks on something, that explains how they want it to present itself. So they go and sit by the board and they create this whole idea that there should be an issue in a certain country, and that country needs to, the first thing that has to happen is the name has to change. So they remove the country's name, like they did with Czechoslovakia, like they've done with many other countries, and they've also removed they've tried to remove certain things from certain countries as well. I cut that part out about South Africa, in order to alter its existence and its perception, so that another thought form can be formulated from that idea, so that it can then be used as a weaponized element. Either way, you have the power to be able to resist the impact of the thought forms, whether they are from A, B, C, or E, F, G, or X, Y, and Z directions from people, based on where you place yourself from within yourself. All thought forms, tulpas, servitors, egregores, ultimately, even when it becomes animated, and even if it's goodness or not, it may react, respond, retreat, fight, angry, BB, whatever, against the knowing that there is a greater energy form that has existed as an original creative force, through which these things trickle through, using that energy force to trickle through, to be humans' little puppets, and whatever the case may be. It dissolves within the knowing that when you are connected to an original creative, knowing that you are ultimately connected as an original being unique to who you are, you, not me, not them, not him, not her, not it, you are unique to you. You are on your throne, your connection to knowing that love is eternally and will be eternal in the communication from the Great Spirit to you, or the original creator, or the Most High, however you want to call it. If that relationship is true and uniquely to you, in other words, your dad will know when you call your dad, when you say his name. That is the unique connection that you have with your dad. Your dad is not my dad. Okay. So if you have that respect for that uniqueness of that connection, it's just an example of the dad, okay? You will respond to your child in the way that your child will respond to you in that unique way. In other words, Great Spirit that communicates with you, or God, or you, in the same way. That is your connection that you have. It's not about my connection that I have. That's about your connection that you have with how you connect with it. That is what helps you to disconnect and become unaffected by thought forms that are projected at you at any given point in time. It's when you have your own unique awareness of who you are that you're able to withstand it. And when you connect in that way through love, that dispels and disconnects and destroys those things that are presenting itself. So it's very important that you take note that once you have that relationship, you've connected that relationship from within first, and then your relationship with that connection to you and from you to that energy through love, that you, and this, when I say Great Spirit, I'm saying it could be whatever you call it. If it's your God or the Most High or whatever you want to call it, the ultimate creator or the one or the whatever, it doesn't matter, okay? My relationship that I have is not the same as that you have with the original creative force. It never will be the same. So therefore, you have to work on that relationship, and you have to focus on it with respectful love. It has to be completely untainted. It was long enough to discuss a much deep perspective on how the reality operates. Has always been this way. You now have it in all the angles of which you need to understand it. And knowing this will be that you need to look after your thoughts. Look after yourselves until next time. And I will keep you in the loop on when the course will be ready. Okay, it's a lot of stuff that I need to put in place. So please keep that in mind. And I will see you soon.